All right, here we go. So Micha, thank you so much for joining us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Pretty great venue. We joked that I should be the judge and we'll put you in the witness stand and see what you have to say for yourself.
Or we should try to put the chairs on the table and see how that works.
Thank you so much for joining us. I wondered, first off, let's see, can we just have a show of hands? How many people have heard of Fiverr before? You know what Fiverr is? How many people, so keep those hands raised, how many people have actually used Fiverr before? How many people have spent more than $5 on Fiverr? Great. So we might just sort of skip through that. We don't have a ton of time in terms of what Fiverr actually is. But why don't we just jump into sort of the story behind Fiverr? And it was founded in 2010. How did it? Why did you decide to start Fiverr in the first place? Where did the idea come from?
So Fiverr was at that point my fourth company, and I think what I was really looking at was a big opportunity, big market opportunity. And you know how it is. Every 10 or 20 years, there's a big macro change that happens. Sometimes it's technology, and sometimes it's just behavior. In our case, it was, I think, accelerated by the recession of 2008. But much like e-commerce 20 years ago, when technology and the internet was made readily available, and all of a sudden there was this migration of the traditional commerce into e-commerce, we saw the same trends happening back in 2009, where we saw a lot of people that are actually starting to ditch the traditional 9-to-5 and are looking for ways to achieve financial independence on very creative ways. And I think that this was accelerated by the recession of 2008 and the fact that millennials were becoming the largest group in the workforce. And we've seen that was probably in the low 30% of the American workforce, but we've seen that growing. I think it's going to be probably about 40% by 2020. So it was a huge market. But at the same time, this market was mainly happening offline. Right now, 97% of freelancing in the US is happening offline. So for me, that was like, it's e-commerce all over again. There's a huge opportunity in this convergence between the offline and the online, where companies can do, using technology, you can do miracles. Right. And that was...
So, I mean, what you're really talking about is behavior change in a certain sense, right? You want people to switch their mentality and say, I was doing it this way, now I can do it that way through Fiverr. So how do you approach, knowing that there are people behind every transaction that happens on the site, how do you begin to sort of shift the psychology, or maybe just how have you seen the shift of psychology in general?
Yeah. I think we're not making that shift. I think that shift is happening. And the idea was to create a platform on top of which people can actually thrive doing whatever they want. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of skepticism about the gig economy in general. And I think in some perspective for good reasons. And I think what's really beautiful about what's happening with Fiverr is the fact that people can do things that they're really passionate about. They can discover their talent and do things that they're passionate about. Are you passionate about driving people around in your Uber car? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. I think in our case, it's really about this intersection between the talent, the passion, and how to make money. And so we wanted to really create the platform so that people can participate in that economy.
Do you expect that a lot of the service providers on your platform are deriving 100% of their income from the platform, or do you expect it more as sort of a passion project for people?
So I think when you look at, Fiverr is a very classic two-sided marketplace, and it operates very much like an e-commerce business, a catalog business. And so the idea, when you look back at other platforms that are similar to an extent, like Amazon or eBay, and you saw their trends of going up market. So starting with, take eBay as an example, starting with amateurs, collectors that were doing trading knickknacks and Beanie Babies and Pez dispensers, right? Over time, it became the platform on top of which businesses can thrive, and eventually merchants. we think the same thing. So we want to cater to different types of needs because there are different types of needs. For some, it's supplemental income or just saving for a rock concert, right? And for some, they want to achieve a full-time thing. And we want to create the infrastructure on top of which people can do that. And people are doing that. There are definitely a ton of people that are making a living out of Fiverr. And this number is growing by 4x every year. So that for us is a target. It's a goal.
So let's take a step back because all the interviews that I've been able to do, I think one of the most interesting things is that every single person who has a successful founding story has a different story. And I know you started Fiverr with a co-founder. Is that someone that you'd worked with in the past, or how did you actually decide to work with this person?
All right. So yes, in our case, we haven't worked before, but we were friends for about 10 years. We known each other pretty well. We had very different backgrounds, but in a good way. It was a good mix, and I think what attracted us to do Fiverr together was the fact that we had this philosophy, maybe because this wasn't my first business, and I didn't want to create another business that you need to constantly hype and push and try to hustle until it grows. I wanted a business that could grow organically, virally, grassroots, true business. And what I wanted to do, I had enough experience from my previous businesses in raising money, and I said, we're going to go bootstrap. We're going to hack the entire thing ourselves. Yeah. So between the two of us, we had enough, design, product, coding. We hacked the entire thing, just the two of us, and we launched it. And it just took off like fire. And then we just started raising money and building a team. And I think what attracted us was the fact that in between the two of us, we felt that we could hack it relatively simple.
How did you said specifically you were looking for a large market opportunity. What convinced you that this was the right direction to go in the first place?
Well, I think, so I've talked about the macro change, right? The shift from traditional work into new ways of work. So that is something that I've looked at. Funny, I remember, I think we were one of the first that actually coined the term gig economy. And when I was talking about that with the early investors, and I was talking about this economy and saying gig economy, you know how you make this strange sound to a dog and they go like this with their heads, like they don't get it. So this is the reaction that I was getting from investors. They thought that this could be a fad or a passing trend, but I think nobody argues this today. But I've seen that trend, and I've seen the activity that was existing in late 2009, and basically what I've identified was the fact that I think that the companies that were operating at that point were under the assumption that if there's an offline labor market, all you need to do is to create an online version of a labor market, and it's going to work. Right. And the reality is, when you think about that, different than e-commerce, where you have inventory on shelves and you have customers and it's a fulfillment challenge. Here, it's people at both sides of the equation, and it's terrible. It's a terrible idea. Seriously, I mean, when you think about human beings, we're not wired to agree on anything. So the existing platforms were created under the assumption that you can mimic offline labor market. So basically, it was something like this. You have a project, you need someone to do that project for you, so you sit and write that project specification, and you file it to that service. Right. And you wait for freelancers to bid on that project, and then you vet all those biddings, and then you negotiate the terms, and then you get the software to remotely manage those people. That's a ton of friction. And I was looking at that and saying, who wants that? Seriously, we're in the economy of do it for me, getting things done. You want to click and just forget about that. So my notion was that everyone is getting it wrong. And this is a market that is ripe for a reboot. And I think what Fiverr has done, and I think not a lot of people identified that, the core of that change when we were a very young company. But what we've done is we've taken away all of the friction by creating a new language, a new operating system that really allowed those talented, creative people to package their skills as very well-defined products. They have scope, they have timing of delivery, and they have price. Great, so now they're items. And we're not a labor market, we're a catalog company. We're an e-commerce business. That's great, we're building the next Amazon for services. So we make it that simple. It's browse, search, buy. This is how we've been educated for 20 years to do this 2-3 clicks. So that is how people should buy services. And we made that so simple, and that rebooted the entire market and made Fiverr what it is today.
So how do you see it evolving? Because, I mean, clearly you're the biggest hype man for your company, and what Fiverr is doing now could be a very small piece of what becomes a very big thing still. How do you think realistically the gig economy, there's a big chance that it could just stay as a niche thing where only people in the sort of like Tim Ferriss mindset of paying people to do things for me instead of doing it myself would ever actually go for a platform. Where do you think the next evolution is?
So the reality is that when we look at the millions of customers that we have, 80 to 85% of them are SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses. They're not necessarily Tim Ferriss. These are the Y Combinators companies. Okay. These are the Silicon Valley companies. We have all of them as customers. They're using it because it makes sense. It's easy, it's very affordable, it's quick. Just click it. It's like, that's the beauty of technology. We're a technology company, and that's where through technology you can take very, very complex problems and challenges and provide a very simple solution, a very simple, slick, easy-to-use product.
Yeah. So with sort of abbreviated period of time, we might actually just start Q&A right now. If anyone has questions, we'll start taking a few from the audience. If you could stand up and speak loudly for the room, that would be great.
What would you say is the greatest insights that you've been able to gather from operating Fiverr in terms of the direction of our economy or something really interesting that you speculate might happen?
So what are the biggest insights from sitting where you sit?
Well, there's so many. I think the first thing that was very surprising as we started Fiverr, I mean, I remember sitting down at our apartment and coming up with ideas of what might people offer. At the beginning, Fiverr was just $5. That was it. That was a single price point, and that was for the first 1 year, the first year. And then we tried to come up with ideas of what can people offer for $5, and we probably came up with a list of 100 or 150 ideas that we had. Right now, we have a catalog that is larger than 5 million different services that are being offered. So one of the surprising things for me was people's creativity and ability to offer very unique things. And in essence, when you think about that, Fiverr is all about connecting people. It's about connecting talented people with people that need that talent. And this is not limited to any country, to any territory. It's a global phenomena. Yes, the US is by far the largest group on Fiverr, but it's not the only one. There's 190 countries that participate on the platform. That's beautiful. So for me, that was very surprising, and it scales, and people embrace that philosophy. And I can talk forever about the cultural changes that come with the gig economy, but I'll say one thing about that. I think that one of the unique things about what happened with Fiverr was that we've identified really early on that some cultural changes about being an independent worker is you might get a little bit lonely because you're sitting in your apartment working or coffee shop, you don't enjoy the engagement of other coworkers. And so what we wanted to create on Fiverr was this essence that when you join Fiverr, you don't become a username. You become a community member. You become a member of like-minded people, a group of like-minded people that are there to support you because they've done this, they've went through that journey just a little bit before you, and they can share, the ups and downs and best practices.
Let's do a few more. How about right in the front?
So you talked about creating operating system and packaging the services,
Right.
but not all services can be packaged. So are you not ignoring those services? For example, custom software development, not packaging. It's very customized.
Right.
How would you?
So yeah.
How do you address things that are very hard to package, right? Services that are very hard to package? Yeah.
It's hard, as I've said. These are complex challenges. You usually use technology to solve that. So there's a lot of metadata that can come through. When you think about what makes a good software developer, there's so many details around that. And there's certain offerings that you can do when you don't think about just sure, there's a customized website creation. Great, but that's a product. How many pages? What components are there? The way products are structured on Fiverr is that there's a basic product, and then there's things that you can add to that product, or there's different packages that you can get. So we've went a long way towards doing that, and most of the transactions are done that way. And in some cases, there's custom requests that are being filled by those same sellers. But at least they get to do most of their business without the back and forth of negotiating every deal.
Do you imagine a future where you could say, I need a software developer for 20 hours a month for the next 3 months? Do you think that's something that could go through Fiverr?
This is happening. I think there are platforms for that. If you want to hire people for a certain amount of times, this is not exactly what we do as a platform. I think the beauty about what we offer is the fact that it's browse search by. You don't have that. You don't need to define. You don't need to commit to a timing. You just need to know what you're looking for, and we have it. And it's just one click away.
What's the largest package that's ever been sold through Fiverr?
Probably about $10,000 for a single transaction.
Wow. Do you know what it was for?
I think it was actually software development.
Okay.
But we have graphic design jobs that goes for thousands of dollars.
Sure. Yeah. How about from the back here? Yep. Go ahead.
So how do you deal with customer service when all your services are coming from a third party, right? So if I don't get my product or service from one of your clients or something you have listed on Fiverr, right? Let's say I want to buy a little graphic or design, and I don't receive that, or I get skimmed out. How do you deal with that customer service?
Oh, that's pretty simple. The entire transaction is centralized on the platform. So basically, when you pay, the money doesn't go to the seller, right? So until that job has been delivered, and you confirm that it was delivered, and everything is thumbs up, they don't get their money. So it keeps everybody honest. And then there's a reputation system, very advanced one, that keeps the marketplace integrity. So that's pretty easy.
Great. Yeah.
One of the criticisms that I've heard, like my brother's a graphic designer, and how do you feel about that basically he thinks that like if someone's going to offer like a logo for $100 and he normally would do something for 500, then he feels like it's cheapening his his craft. Have you ever heard that criticism?
Well, I think it's more of fear than criticism, and I think it's natural, and it's okay. And I think when you think about take other industries like PR business, there are PR agencies that are going to charge $20,000 minimum, $20,000 for a month to serve you, and those who are willing to work for $1,000. Is that cheapening? I don't think so. There's a price point to every degree of quality or expertise, and it's a blue ocean. I mean, when you look at the size of the market, there's infinite amount of work. And I think one of the great things about platforms like ours is the fact that you don't need to spend half of your time killing your own food. You don't need to chase customers. You just need to show up. And we take care of that. So I think you see very different types of price points. I don't see any forces. People that are not willing to pay $5,000 for design work are not going to pay $5,000 for design work. It's not going to happen anyway. So
we'll have to wrap up actually
Okay.
shortly. But Micha, as a serial entrepreneur, my final question would be: what are the biggest consistencies? What are the biggest things that you've seen in starting multiple companies that you might be able to share with the audience?
Again, so many lessons. I think that here in the Bay Area, I think it's focus on how technology can solve very, very complex things that human beings are having a hard time doing. Taking a complex problem like car hailing and liquidity management and make it a click of a push button, right? And then beyond that, the best investment that I've ever done was in the right team. So finding the right people to walk that walk with you, to take that journey, not take shortcuts, understand that, entrepreneurship is it's kind of a journey without destination. You don't there's no end point. Right. It doesn't stop anywhere. Enjoy the journey. It's like, that's what we're here for. People that are here to gain something very specific and have an end point are probably not the right people to join you on your journey. So that's, at least for the zero time we have, that's my tip.
Great. Well, Micha, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
your
very
time.
much.
I really appreciate it.
Sure.